Hello, and welcome to another episode of Solipsist Watched. I'm your host, the Social Solipsist, and this week I watched 2021's No Sudden Move. This is a movie I didn't really know about until very recently. That's unsurprising because it only came out a few weeks ago, I think. Although I think it was at Tribeca, in whatever context that existed this year. It is a Steven Soderbergh directed film, which both, draws me to it a little and pushes me away in some other ways. If you've watched all of this series, you know that I watched Logan Lucky, which I was very, very fond of. That was also a Soderbergh film and made me sort of more drawn towards some of his stuff. But Soderbergh has a mixed history in my mind. So, I was curious. It is, to some level, a heist film. Not really, but it sort of has a lot of the kind of similar framework in a way that I think is really interesting, both in the sense of this is what Soderbergh likes, these are the stories he likes to direct, and that he likes to play with, but also so many of the things that Soderbergh has previously been known for in the sort of crime, low-level crime sort of area, the personal level of crime, but also subverting a lot of his tendencies in that area. So really, it's more of a, crime drama, I guess. It features a pretty ensemble cast, which I really appreciated. It's quite the cast, actually, for being fairly low budget. Allegedly about a bit over $8 million for the whole thing. So pretty impressive. The two leads, if one can call it that, are Don Cheadle and Benicio del Toro. I don't think I've ever talked about Don Cheadle on the show before. I quite like Don Cheadle. I think he's an underrated actor. And I think he's got range that he doesn't get to show off all that often, but I think he's very talented. Benicio del Toro, I talked about back in Sicario. I think he's questionable. I don't know whether it's just that I have never really seen him put on a performance I really loved, or if he's genuinely sort of a middling actor. He does do a pretty good job here. I was pleased. I thought he fit the role pretty well. But as with a lot of characters in this entire film, it's fairly understated. This is I'm just going to move away from talking about the cast for a moment to talk about the tone as a whole, which is the whole film is shockingly understated, both for the genre and for Soderbergh. Normally, one of Soderbergh's strengths, I think, is actually leaning into some of the flair and panache that you can get out of the crime genre and those sorts of things. Characters that are characters, a little flamboyant. And comparatively speaking, I think this is the most subdued I've ever seen Soderbergh direct characters. I think it could be down to the level that some people might actually have a problem with it, where it's a little too down to earth, a little too, localized to a time and place and those sorts of things. But it's interesting because it's interesting to see what the actors are left to do or to work with, and potentially how Soderbergh directs in a more subtle fashion. So overall, I really appreciated that as a twist on my expectations for what would be made of a Soderbergh crime drama film. Along with those two, we've got David Harbour, probably best known for Stranger Things right now. John Hamm, Brendan Fraser, who was nice to see. Haven't seen him in a long time. Julia Fox, Amy Seimetz, or Seimetz, I'm not sure. Let's see. There was also Bill Duke and Ray Liotta. Bill Duke, Bill Duke plays Bill Duke. He's great. He does a good job. Ray Liotta, I've got certain feelings on. Obviously he's known for why can't I remember the name of that fucking film? I've got mixed feelings on Goodfellas. He's probably best known for that. I've got mixed feelings on that film as a whole. I could spend hours talking about that film. I really like it, but I've also got some very serious problems with it. Ray Liotta is not a great actor. I've seen him in some other things, and he stands out like a sore thumb. He's kind of a weird dude. But here, in playing, playing a small part in an ensemble piece, he actually works really well. In fact, I was questioning for a bit whether it was Ray Liotta or not, because one, because of the acting that he was doing, and two, because I don't know if he got work done or just like got fitter or something. Like, he's an old man now. I mean, he's got to be probably in his 70s. I don't know. He's an older man. He was always a little pockmarked in the face to begin with. Not the prettiest boy, but I don't know. He's looked a lot rougher in things I've watched, or earlier, made before this. So I was a little surprised to see, he fits this part and was like shaped up and did a good job. I was kind of pleased. So yeah, interesting to see him there, and both him and Benicio del Toro going above what I sort of expected and wanted from them. So pretty pleased there. I think all of the performances are quite good, with maybe a few minor exceptions, not enough to be glaring. All the characters, this being an ensemble piece and it only being a bit under 2 hours long, there's only so much time, right? And everybody has their small part to play on screen for the most part. So it's interesting just how much he gets, that Soderbergh got out of each of these characters, and how good generally the writing was in terms of letting the characters be what they needed to be and not, much more. It doesn't feel, nobody feels not fleshed out enough. Everybody feels like they fit in the world. They know where they know each other. They know each other. It's all very believable as a cohesive whole, that these characters have these pre-established relationships, and you're very much being that fly on the wall, sort of intruding into the scenes. And we'll get back to that in a little bit. So what else is fascinating about this is structurally, the film feels like it's going to go one way, and then it goes several other ways. This is very much a departure from typical sort of heist movie structure, where it is more of a process of unfolding, of understanding the world as a couple of the characters, mostly these main characters, understand it. In a way that I've talked about previously, this is a case where you as the audience member are very much in the dark, even relative to the characters who you're watching most closely. Everybody is sort of feeling out where their places are in this world, and like they're trying to figure out what's going on. But for the most part, the audience is always kept the most in the dark. That's something I think could be frustrating to some people. I really like it. I don't feel like at any point it was contrived or I was deliberately having things hidden from me. And I think it really serves to add to the intrigue and the depth of the world, and to the point that I would probably go back and rewatch it again and see things that I, couldn't have grasped the first time without the understanding that I would have later. I don't think that's to the movie's detriment at all. But I know there are people who might feel that way. So as far as the rest of let's talk about the story and the dialogue a bit. The story is somewhat limited. This is really about a story as it unfolds rather than having a clear beginning, middle, and end. There's sort of stakes established and stakes concluded. And all of these characters and their varied interests all sort of come together at the same time, and the story very naturally feels like it unfolds as characters understand what the stakes are and where their place is and what their objectives change. So as far as the story as a whole, that's really not the focus. It's more about understanding each character's place in the dynamics of the world and watching them navigate that themselves. It's not a character study for a variety of reasons, but it sort of leans in that sort of stylistic direction, which I think was a lot of fun. It does mean that it's not the most compelling, like in terms of like really, hook you in, which is something Soderbergh historically has been very good at. Not always the most nuanced, but if you want to just, be on sort of a quick, fast-paced, fun kind of, ensemble cast ride, that's not really what you're getting here. Compared to something like Logan Lucky is a lot more like kind of fun, get you into it, be invested. This is more, it's voyeuristic almost. And that's actually a good segue into talking about some of the filming style, because this is also, in a lot of ways, a departure from Soderbergh's typical directorial style and directorial choices. Cinematography choices. One of the possibly the most glaring change is the lens chosen. As far as I can tell, this entire film is shot with a fisheye lens. It's not really dramatic. It's not like a rap video from the 90s, but it's definitely a fisheye. And I can imagine, again, this being off-putting to some people. It is a stylistic departure for Soderbergh, and it's not something you see very often in a whole lot of other cinema in general. It's typically fisheyes are almost very rarely seen in cinema. If they are, it's usually for very specific reasons, very specific short shots. I haven't settled on how I feel about it. On the whole, I like it as an artistic choice. I'm not sure I feel like it's the best choice to shoot the entire film with it. Because there are some shots that work super, super well and some that are pretty ugly. But I appreciated some of the secondary effects that it has. Not the least of which is, as I was talking about, sort of this idea of you being an observer, of this being sort of a voyeuristic endeavor is really interesting. Some of the distortion that is caused in the film also adds to this feeling of uneasiness, like you're not supposed to be there, but also that the characters themselves are sort of feeling a little bit confused or dazed, or they're trying to sort out what's going on. And in that way, I think it adds to the cinematic storytelling to have these shots that are stylized in this way. there are arguments for and against this. I would sort of say that I don't think the whole ultimately I don't think the whole thing should have been shot like this. There are some shots where it just the effort is put to the effort is wasted. It would look better with, even if it was, hey, we shoot 70% of the film with the fisheye, and then we've got inserts with, a telephoto or something like that, which I think would clean up some of the visual inconsistency that feels more like well, we shot the whole rest of the film like this. We have to shoot this shot like this. There's just a few. But on the whole, I appreciated what it did for the film, and I appreciate anybody who's going to take, a stand in an artistic choice like that, even if it doesn't execute perfectly. The script, I guess I didn't really talk about the script, actually. There are some issues with the script. The script is generally very good, but one of the things that sort of makes the whole film not quite knit together properly is there's sometimes a lack of cohesion from scene to scene and occasionally from shot to shot. All of the actors are putting on good performances, and the dialogue itself, I think is pretty consistently well written. But there are portions where it feels like one scene does not flow into the next all that well. I can't really put more detail into it other than, more detail than that, both for the sake of not, spoiling anything, but also just, it is more of a nebulous thing where I feel like the script is good, but it needs some tidying for the through line of the film, I guess. But that's also a difficult, I fully acknowledge that's got to be a difficult thing to do with any ensemble cast. And there's so many other good things, other things that are difficult and well executed in the writing and the script, that it feels hard. It's hard to find, a very serious fault with that. So yeah. It's an interesting story. I don't know that I like it as much as Logan Lucky. Given the choice, I would rewatch Logan Lucky. But it is an interesting departure, and I think definitely worth a watch if you're interested in that sort of thing. It touches on a lot of interesting topics that are alarmingly prescient in modern times. Not with always the deftest hand, but in a way that I think is interesting and well integrated. One other thing that I forgot to mention earlier when I was talking about the actors is that with this is set in Detroit in the 50s, and for the time and place and the genre, there is a surprising amount of nuance in the writing to both race relations and racial tension, and also the place of women in the society at the time. This would very easily be a setting and a genre in which the writers could have gotten away with being lazier and making, especially female characters be more just sort of background and not fully fledged characters, but they very much are. They have, they have personality, they have motivations of their own, and they are fully fledged characters to complement all the male characters. They are not really secondary at all, which they easily could have gotten away with not doing. And I appreciate that they made a substantial effort there to sort of add flavor to the genre. The post-war, well, pre-war and post-war era of the United States really gets whitewashed culturally as a place where women weren't people. And it's not great. It's very boring. And they're well, not to get on too much of a tangent. There's this idea that because women were oppressed, that like cinematically they end up not being characters, which I think is a huge mistake and a missed opportunity writing wise to see what people do under the strictures of a repressive cultural norm. So really interesting there. Likewise with because there is a substantial amount of the film that deals with racial tension, to see a nuanced viewpoint of how various characters interact with each other, not just between black and white characters, but the sort of, how do I say this without spoiling anything? The exchanges that are had are nuanced. It's not just this character is prejudiced and this character isn't, and this character has these ideas and assumptions, and they're affirmed or subverted. It's not that, like, it's much more nuanced than that. And it's interesting to see how the characters play off each other. I think it's really well done. So yeah, very much credit to that as well. And the characters all put on a great show. It's a very, I hate this phrase, but it's a lived-in world, and I really appreciate that. So even with some of the faults I have about its overall narrative structure, and some of the stylistic choices, like, I really appreciate some of the things the film did. Okay, am I actually bringing it to a close now? I think I am. All right. Thank you guys for watching another episode of Solipsist Watched. I've been the Social Solipsist. I had fun watching this movie. I think you should watch it, and I will see you guys next time.